Welcome to JavaScript functions and prototypes. After watching this video, you will be able to describe functions in JavaScript, describe prototypes in JavaScript, and demonstrate how to create a custom object.
A function is a block of code which can be called from any point in a script after being declared. A function is made up of the following parts: the keyword function, the name of the function, parentheses with optional parameter arguments, curly braces with the logic. The last statement in a function block is the optional return statement that returns control back to whatever called the function. This example is a function that is named add. This function takes two parameter arguments and returns the sum of the arguments, or concatenates the two arguments if they are strings. Notice that you do not specify the data type for the arguments of the function. The data types are determined by the values of the arguments that are being passed to the function. There is no specific return type declared. The function returns whatever type is required. In this case, the return is a simple addition or concatenation of the input parameters. The action chosen depends on what data is provided to the function. If the values can be interpreted as numbers, they are added. If they can be interpreted as strings, they are concatenated.
This is an example of declaring a function named car that accepts three arguments as parameters. A little further down, you specifically ask the function to run by declaring the statement var c equals new car with the arguments Meridian, Sabre GT, and 2012. In the car function, the keyword this refers to the current instance of the car object that is being created. In other words, an instance of car that is associated with the variable named c. Using the this keyword can differentiate whether you are referring to the global or local instance of a variable. The use of model in this example refers to the argument that was passed into the function, while the use of this model refers to the model property associated with the current instance of the car object. The getName function of car returns the make, model, and year of the newly created car object. Prototypes allow you to easily define properties and methods for all instances of a particular object. All JavaScript objects which can be created with the new keyword inherit properties and methods from a prototype. For example, the car object we created previously inherits the make, model, and year properties from the constructor function, which are implicitly defined in the car prototype. When a car object is created, that object inherits all the properties and methods that are defined by this prototype. Unlike objects, the methods and properties of prototypes can be changed with one call. So, if you want to add a new property to an object's constructor function, for example, you must add it to the function directly by adding it as an additional argument. It cannot be done simply by calling the object itself. With a prototype, however, it is possible to add a property or method with just one call. Since all objects have a prototype property, this is an easier way to add properties and functions to objects. Any object that gets instantiated inherits the current state of the prototype. If a prototype changes, all objects using it will automatically inherit the new properties and functions within that prototype. One way to change a prototype is via a script, which can override prototype properties and functions.
Here is another example that uses a prototype to change car instances. This time, you add a method function called getName to the car prototype. Now, when a car object is instantiated, it also includes the getName function that returns the make, model, and year. All existing instances of the car object also inherit the getName method. Functions are usually declared first and not run until you specifically ask them to, as you saw in some of the previous examples. Auto-invocation or self-executing functions start running immediately after being declared. The functions and variables inside self-executing functions are only available to the code inside the self-executing function. Auto-invocation functions can also be unnamed or anonymous functions and have the format that is shown in the code block on the slide. Self-executing functions are often used to initialize data or to declare DOM elements on the page. In this video, you learned a function is a block of code which can be called from any point in a script after being declared. Functions can take arguments passed as parameters and can return results. By using prototypes, you can easily define properties and methods for all instances of a specific object. Prototypes exist for all JavaScript objects that can be created with the new keyword. To add a new function to the template for the object, modify the prototype for the object. Self-executing or auto-invocation functions start running immediately after they have been declared. The functions and variables are isolated from the rest of the script.